She rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with disdain. "Oh, grow up, Robert. You're a joke. I deserve better." It was a Thursday evening when my world tilted off its axis. I came home to the scent of fresh flowers and the sight of Grace, my wife, grinning as she admired a new diamond necklace in the mirror. My heart sank. I hadn't bought it. "Hey, Grace, nice necklace. Where'd you get it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at me, a smile fading into something colder. "Oh, Robert, don't start," she said dismissively, turning back to the mirror and adjusting the necklace. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Start what? Just asking a simple question. She sighed dramatically, the kind of exaggerated sigh she used when she thought I was being particularly dense. It's a gift from someone who actually cares about me. I blinked, stunned by her bluntness. "What are you talking about?" Grace turned to face me, her eyes cold and unyielding. "You really want to know? Fine. It's from your boss, Charles. We've been seeing each other for months. He treats me like a queen, unlike you." My mind reeled. Charles, my boss. How could this be happening? "Grace, what the hell? How could you do this to me?" She rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with disdain. "Oh, grow up, Robert. You're a joke. You can't even provide for me properly. I deserve better." I felt the room spin as her words sliced through me. "So this is it? You're just going to throw everything away?" "Yes, I am. And I want a divorce," she said, her tone icy and final. I stood there, dumbfounded, as she walked past me, leaving the scent of her perfume in her wake. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "Grace, wait," I called after her, desperation seeping into my voice. "Can't we talk about this? We've been together for 5 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" She stopped and turned, her expression one of mild annoyance. 5 years of what, Robert? Mediocrity, settling for less. I'm done with that. Charles offers me the life I deserve. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "And what about us? What about the vows we made?" Grace laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Vows? Don't be naive. People change, Robert. I've changed. I want more, and Charles can give me that." I felt a burning sensation behind my eyes, but I refused to let the tears fall. "So that's it? You're just going to leave?" She shrugged, looking almost bored. "I've already packed my bags. I'm staying at Charles' place tonight." I watched as she picked up her suitcase from the bedroom. The sight of her casually walking out of our home, out of our life together, felt surreal. I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay, but I knew it would be pointless. "Grace," I said one last time, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" She paused at the door, looking back at me with a hint of something. Pity, perhaps. "Because I deserve better, Robert. And so do you." With that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me standing in the middle of our living room, the scent of fresh flowers and her perfume lingering in the air. I felt a hollow ache in my chest, a deep sense of loss and betrayal. The life I thought I had was shattered, replaced by an uncertain and painful reality. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions at work, avoiding Charles as much as possible. My mind kept replaying Grace's words, each one a dagger to my heart. Every time I saw Charles, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal that was hard to contain. I kept my head down, focusing on the mundane tasks that filled my day, all the while plotting my next move. One evening, as I nursed a drink at home, the idea started to take shape. I thought about the times Charles had confided in me, the stories he told, the secrets he shared over drinks or in moments of misplaced trust. And then it hit me, I could use those against him. I spent the next few weeks gathering evidence. Emails, phone records, anything I could find that tied Charles to illegal activities. I remembered a particularly damning conversation about a failed drug test that he had somehow swept under the rug. I started digging through old emails, searching for any trace of his cover-up. My friend Dave, who worked in it, proved to be an invaluable ally. "Hey, Dave," I said, trying to keep my voice casual during a coffee break. "I need a favor. It's about Charles." Dave raised an eyebrow. "What about him?" I hesitated, then decided to lay it all out. "He's been having an affair with Grace, and I think he's involved in some illegal stuff. I need to find proof." Dave looked at me for a long moment before nodding. "All right, Robert. I'll help you, but you better be sure about this." We spent hours after work digging through files, accessing secured records, and piecing together the puzzle. It was grueling work, but bit by bit, we uncovered enough to paint a damning picture of Charles' activities. Emails discussing shipments of questionable substances, phone records linking him to shady contacts, and the failed drug test that had mysteriously disappeared from his personnel file. One evening, I called Dave over to my place to review our findings. We sat at my kitchen table, papers and printouts strewn everywhere. "This is it," I said, tapping a printout of an email thread. This shows he knew about the failed drug test and actively covered it up. Dave leaned in, reading the email carefully. "This is solid, Robert. But are you ready for what comes next?" I nodded, the resolve hardening within me. "I have to be. He took everything from me. This is the only way to make things right." Finally, I had enough to go to the police. I walked into the station, my heart pounding in my chest, and told them everything I knew. Detective Harris listened intently as I laid out the evidence. "We'll need to verify all this," Harris said, glancing up from the documents. "But if it's true, you've just opened up a major investigation." I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and satisfaction. "I understand. Just do what you have to do." As I left the police station, a sense of grim determination settled over me. I had set the wheels in motion, and there was no turning back now. The investigation was underway, and with any luck, Charles would soon face the consequences of his actions. Back at home, I sat in the quiet of my living room, the weight of the day settling on me. I had taken a significant step toward justice, but the battle was far from over. There was still the matter of Grace and the looming divorce. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction, knowing that Charles' downfall had begun. It was a crisp morning when the police showed up at the office. I was at my desk, pretending to be engrossed in a spreadsheet, but I had been on edge all morning, anticipating this moment. When the commotion started near Charles' office, I knew what was happening. I watched from my desk as two officers escorted Charles out in handcuffs. His face was a mixture of shock and anger, his eyes darting around as if looking for someone to blame. Our eyes met briefly, and I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. He had betrayed me, and now he was paying the price. The office was abuzz with whispers and speculation. News spread like wildfire. Charles was arrested for multiple charges, including drug possession and embezzlement. The company was in chaos, with employees huddled in small groups, murmuring in disbelief. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I walked into my boss's office the next day, carrying my resignation letter. Sarah, our HR manager, looked up at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Robert, what's this?" she asked, taking the letter from my hand. "I can't work here anymore, Sarah. Not after everything that's happened," I replied, my voice firm. She nodded slowly. "I understand. It's been a tough time for all of us. I'm sorry to see you go." I thanked her and left the office, feeling a strange mix of liberation and uncertainty. The job had been a significant part of my life, but staying there was impossible now. When I got home, I found Grace waiting for me in the living room. She looked worried, her usual confidence replaced with a hint of fear. "What did you do, Robert?" she demanded, her voice shaking slightly. I dropped my bag by the door and faced her. "I did what I had to do. Charles is going to pay for what he did. And so are you." Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do this to me. I'll ruin you in the divorce." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the silent room. "Good luck with that. I'm not going down without a fight." She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just destroy my life and get away with it." I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. You destroyed our life, Grace. You chose this path. Now you have to deal with the consequences. Her face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, Robert. I swear you will. I stood my ground, my resolve unwavering. We'll see about that. Grace stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. The woman I had once loved was now a stranger, and the life we had built together was in ruins. But I wasn't going to let her or Charles destroy me. I walked to the window and looked out at the city, feeling a strange sense of determination. The tension was palpable as Grace and I sat across from each other in the small, sterile room reserved for divorce negotiations. Our lawyers flanked us, their briefcases full of documents that detailed the disintegration of our marriage. Grace was immaculate as ever, her expression a mask of cool detachment. But I could see the fury simmering beneath the surface. As the negotiations began, Grace's lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman with an icy demeanor, spoke first. My client is seeking a significant portion of Mr. Griffin's assets, including the house, the car, and a substantial monthly alimony payment. I clenched my jaw, my mind reeling at the audacity of her demands. Grace sat there, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. She was confident, perhaps even gloating. My lawyer, Tom, leaned forward. Mr. Griffin has his own claims to present, he said, sliding a thick folder across the table. This contains evidence of Mrs. Griffin's infidelity and her involvement with Charles' illegal activities. Grace's smirk faltered as her lawyer opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents. I watched as the color drained from Grace's face. She turned to her lawyer, her voice a hiss. Do something. Her lawyer cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. These allegations are unsubstantiated. Mrs. Griffin's relationship with Mr. Charles is irrelevant to the financial settlement. Tom shook his head, a grim smile on his face. The evidence speaks for itself. Phone records, emails, even photos. Not to mention the financial transactions that tie Mrs. Griffin to Mr. Charles' embezzlement scheme. Grace's lawyer tried to protest, but it was clear the tide had turned. The weight of the evidence was undeniable. Grace's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her eyes flashed with panic, and she turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. You think you've won, Robert. You're still nothing without me, she spat. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of pity and anger. I may have lost you, Grace, but I've gained something more valuable, my self-respect. Goodbye, Grace. Her face twisted in rage, but she had no more cards to play. The settlement was finalized, heavily favoring me. She left the room in a huff, slamming the door behind her. I sat there for a moment, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, was now a stranger. Tom patted my shoulder. You did well, Robert. It's over now. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. The nightmare that consumed my life for the past few months had finally come to an end. I walked out of the building, the sun shining brightly overhead. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. With the divorce finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Charles's sentencing had been swift and merciless. The charges of drug possession and embezzlement stacked against him were undeniable. His once confident demeanor was reduced to a hollow shell as he was led away in handcuffs. The fallout was immediate. His wife and children couldn't bear the public shame and disappeared from his life entirely. I quit my job at the company that had once been my career cornerstone and started working for my father's small construction business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. There was something therapeutic about the physical labor, the steady rhythm of building something tangible. Each completed project felt like a small victory, a step towards reclaiming my life. One evening, after a long day of work, I was about to head home when my phone buzzed. It was an old friend from college, Matt. We hadn't spoken in years, but he'd heard about the chaos my life had descended into. Hey, Robert, it's Matt. I heard about everything. How are you holding up? I pause, leaning against my car, considering my response. Hey Matt, I'm doing better. It's been tough, but I'm getting through it. Thanks for checking in. I can't believe it, man. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. You deserve better. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Yeah, it was a rough patch. But you know, working with my dad has been good for me. It's different, but it's honest. Feels good to do something real. Matt laughed lightly. Yeah, I get that. Sometimes a change of pace is just what you need. You're thinking about sticking with it. For now, yeah, it's a good fit. How about you? How's life treating you? We talked for a while longer, catching up on old times and new developments. It felt good to reconnect, to remember that I still have friends who cared about me. The days turned into weeks and slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I rented a small apartment close to construction sites, enjoying the simplicity of my new routine. I even picked up a few new hobbies, running in the mornings and trying my hand at cooking in the evenings. It was a far cry from the life I had envisioned, but it was mine, and that was enough. One day, as I was leaving a job site, my dad, a burly man with a perpetual twinkle in his eye, walked over. Hey, Robert. You did good today. Proud of you, son. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had been missing for a long time. Thanks, Dad. Means a lot coming from you. He clapped me on the shoulder. Keep it up. You're a natural. As I drove home that evening, the sun setting in a blaze of colors, I felt a sense of peace. The past few months had been a whirlwind of pain and betrayal, but I had come out the other side stronger. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. When I got home, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from Grace. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. Robert, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. Sorry for everything I put you through. I know it's too late to make amends, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. Grace. I folded the letter and put it away. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, but it was a step towards closure. As I stood there in the quiet of my new apartment, I realized I was ready to move forward. The past was behind me, and the future, whatever it held, was mine to shape. Update. Months passed, and slowly, I began to feel like myself again. I threw myself into my work at my father's construction company, finding solace in the steady, tangible progress each day brought. Reconnecting with friends and family became a cornerstone of my healing process. They had been my rock during the darkest times, and their unwavering support meant everything to me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a warm glow over the construction yard, my father approached me. His gruff exterior softened by the day's end, he looked thoughtful. Robert, he started, his voice tinged with a seriousness that immediately caught my attention. I've been thinking. I put down the wrench I was holding and turned to face him fully. What's on your mind, Dad? He rubbed his chin, eyes narrowing as he chose his words carefully. You've shown great resilience and strength these past months. The way you've handled everything, both personally and professionally, it's impressive. I'm proud of you. A mix of emotions surged through me. Pride, gratitude, and a bit of surprise. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot coming from you. He nodded, his gaze steady. I've been considering giving you more responsibility around here. How would you feel about that? I was taken aback. Are you serious? He smiled, the lines on his face softening. Absolutely. You've earned it, son. You've proven yourself more than capable. I felt a surge of pride and gratitude. This wasn't just about the job. It was a symbol of my recovery, of moving forward. Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down. He clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. I know you won't. We'll start transitioning some of the bigger projects to you next week. The following days were a whirlwind of activity and preparation. I delved into blueprints, budgets, and project timelines with a renewed sense of purpose. The trust my father placed in me fueled my determination to excel. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to call my old friend Matt. We had been in touch sporadically since that first phone call, but I wanted to share my latest news. "Hey Matt, got a minute?" "Robert, of course, what's up?" "I just wanted to let you know, I'm taking on more responsibility of the company. My dad's given me some major projects to handle." "That's fantastic, man. I'm really happy for you. You deserve this." "Thanks, Matt. It feels good to be moving forward, you know." We chatted for a while, reminiscing about college days and making plans to catch up in person soon. Hanging up, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Life was far from perfect, but it was heading in the right direction. The first major project I was tasked with was a new residential development on the outskirts of town. It was ambitious and complex, but I welcomed the challenge. As I stood on the construction site, overseeing the crew, I felt a sense of accomplishment. The sound of machinery and the sight of the building taking shape were tangible evidence of progress, not just in my career, but in my life. One afternoon, as I was reviewing some plans, my father walked over, a rare look of satisfaction on his face. "Robert, this project is coming along nicely. You're doing an excellent job." I smiled, feeling the warmth of his praise. "Thanks, Dad. It's a team effort, but I'm glad to be leading it." He nodded. "You're more than leading it. You're thriving. Keep it up." As the weeks turned into months, I fully embraced my new role at the company. The satisfaction I felt from seeing projects come to life, from initial blueprints to finished homes, was unparalleled. It was a fulfillment I hadn't experienced in a long time. My painful past has shaped me into a stronger, more resilient person. One crisp autumn day, I was leaving the office, savoring the cool breeze and the hint of fallen leaves in the air, when I almost bumped into someone. Looking up, I found myself face to face with Emily, an old acquaintance from college. She had always been kind and supportive, and seeing her now brought back a flood of memories. "Robert, is that you?" she asked, her eyes lighting up with recognition and warmth. I smiled, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through me. "Emily, it's been too long. How have you been?" We walked to a nearby cafe, settling into a cozy corner with cups of steaming coffee. We spent hours catching up, sharing stories of where life had taken us since college. Emily talked about her work as a graphic designer and her recent travels. I told her about my journey through the turmoil of my marriage and the new chapter I was building with my father's company. At one point, she looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You've been through so much, Robert. I'm glad to see you've come out stronger." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection and gratitude. It wasn't easy, but I had a lot of support. And honestly, reconnecting with old friends like you makes a huge difference. She smiled, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Well, let's make sure we don't wait so long to see each other again. Okay." I felt a spark of something new and promising. "Definitely. Let's keep in touch." As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of hope. Emily and I exchanged numbers, promising to meet up again soon. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. My new responsibilities at the company kept me busy, but I found myself looking forward to my evenings and weekends. Emily and I started meeting regularly, exploring new restaurants, going to art exhibits, and even taking a few weekend hikes. Each time we met, I felt a growing sense of companionship and joy. One evening, as we walked along a quiet path in the park, Emily turned to me, her expression serious. "Robert, I've really enjoyed spending time with you. It's been wonderful getting to know you again." I stopped, looking into her eyes. "I feel the same way, Emily. You've brought a lot of light back into my life." She smiled, her hand reaching out to take mine. "Here's to new beginnings and a brighter future." We stood there for a moment, the world around us fading into the background. In that instant, I knew that despite the pain and heartache of the past, I was on the right path. I had rediscovered myself, found new purpose, and was opening my heart to the possibilities of the future. As we continued our walk, hand in hand, I I felt a profound sense of peace and optimism. My past was behind me, a chapter closed.